All right, Kurt. Before we jumped on here, you were telling me about this concept of the dumb tax that I think is exactly where we should start. So, what
Yeah.
exactly is this?
Yes. So I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Keith Cunningham, who is a great author and speaker who everyone should read, has a wonderful book called The Road Less Stupid. And as a business owner, he says most of us, if we were given a chance and could go back in time, would would choose, and we could choose between rolling back a dumb decision we made or maybe taking advantage of an opportunity. We could have been an early investor in some stock, whatever, that we would almost inevitably choose rolling back the bad decision, because that's really what kills us in business. It's not being thoughtful, not being overly confident, rosy projections, and then making dumb decisions that cost us money. And the cost of recovering money that we've lost is much higher than just not making the deal, not doing the thing at all. And he calls this the dumb tax, right? When we aren't thoughtful, we aren't intelligent about decision making, we choose not to make to be thoughtful about our choices, we pay the dumb tax. And that's certainly been an experience I've had in my life. So it rings true. Everybody should get it. Keith Cunningham, Road Less Stupid, in the dumb tax.
Now, I often say that the biggest mistake of my life was not investing in Bitcoin when it was $5 back in the day, and I had friends actually telling me about this. So let's
Yeah.
just pull the string on this a little bit. I mean, that's a huge missed opportunity and mistake there. What might be a dumb decision that I made that would be an even bigger dumb tax?
I've spent a lot of time thinking about this myself. Now I could tell from my own experience. It's funny that you mentioned crypto, right? Because I relate this whole concept of, Keith Cunningham's theme is that business owners tend to be overly optimistic. We tend to overestimate our ability to do stuff. We tend to ignore risks or not take them seriously enough. In part because at various times in our life, maybe we got away with taking a big risk and it succeeded, but then we choose to ignore them. I take it a little bit further in my life. I've examined some of my dumb tax decisions, which I want to get into, and I felt like, given some real thought about it, that as a person of faith, I'm taught that I serve one God only. I serve God, I serve Jesus. I'm Christ centered in my decision making. But it's so easy in life to get caught up in idols, which tend to be good things that exist in the world. But when you put them in the wrong spot in your life, when you put them and elevate them, say, more important than faith, more important
Mm.
than God, you get cruel masters, right? And so for me, I always felt, I've come to understand that I perceive success so important in my life because it's a measure of how well I'm doing, right? If some people want to be successful, they want money because they want to buy a Lambo. And I always would tell myself, well, I'm not buying Lamborghinis. So I'm not too greedy. I'm not too into money. But where it was important to me was I could walk into a room or I could know what's going on in somebody's life and I know, okay, I'm doing better. I'm making more money than this business or this person. And this is a scorecard. I think the biographer John D. Rockefeller said the same thing. At the end, he didn't need any more money, but making more money was an indication that he was winning. And for me, it poured into my identity. And then success becomes more important than God. And when it does, you make bad decisions. I remember thinking I had been to a conference, and the speaker at the conference got up and said the average net worth in this room is $12 million. And I remember doing the calculation in my mind, thinking I might be worth, a third of that or something, depending on how you want to value my business. Which, by the way, is more money than I ever dreamed of. growing up, right? I would dream of becoming a millionaire, and then immediately you're unsatisfied. And it was a finance conference that we then met. We then heard from some wonderful financial speakers, and they were talking about money for retirement. And I got it in my head, I needed $75 million. That's my goal. I need $75 million in my retirement, and then I could live off the interest and live really good. And of course, I'll give some money to charity. I'll do all this stuff, but and I need to be on the same level as these other people in the room. And not only that, I want to be even more successful. And this led me to make some really bad decisions, because then my investment strategy went from wealth preservation and making sure I had money for retirement and to pay my bills to how can I get 25% on my cash. So you mentioned crypto. So of course I invested a bunch of money in crypto just before the crypto crash, right? So I wasn't in early with Bitcoin. But why did I do it? I felt like crypto was a way to get to $75 million faster. And that was a really expensive dumb tax for me to pay, because I underappreciated the risks. I was overly optimistic. I talked to a bunch of people who'd made money in crypto, right? And I also thought what I need more businesses, right? So I have one business. If I had two businesses, like some of these other people, I'd make more money. And so I'm making decisions not because I feel called to serve more customers in a better way and to create more value, but because I felt this compelling need to be more successful. And, you know, it's very interesting. Another author I'd highly recommend is Tim Keller, who writes a book called Counterfeit Gods. And he says the worst part about serving the wrong master in your life, serving the wrong idols, is that idols tend to be cruel masters, particularly when you're not serving the one true master, right? So, so to answer your question, yeah, maybe you should have invested $5, but I suspect when there was $5, but I suspect if you thought about it, you'd go back and say, you know what, if I didn't quit that job, or if I didn't put that money in that business that failed because I wasn't looking at the risk, right? Or if I just, I had a balanced portfolio, all of those things, you might say, you know what, I'd be $1 million richer today, which is a lot more than if I would have invested in 2 Bitcoins at $5 today.
So that is a great explanation, and I love the way that you're framing this. It gets back to something I talk about a lot, which is if you want to be successful in life, if you want to have more money, if you want to be happier, one of the worst things you can do is just make that the specific thing that you're trying to maximize for, and make everything else secondary.
Yeah.
Whereas alternatively, if you have a clearly higher purpose, if you are putting what really matters in life, in business, putting other stakeholders first, if you're putting the purpose of the business first, the money will come afterwards. But you have to get the ordering of that correct in order to get the right results.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tempting because the best idols are not bad things in inherently. There's money's not bad inherently. We need it to pay bills, and money is needed to build grand buildings and do important things. So it's not bad. One of the things I've thought about myself is I really care how I'm perceived by other people, right? So I want other people to like me. I want them to think good things about me. There's nothing bad inherently about that. It means I'm actually a pretty likable guy, pretty easygoing. People tend to like me. But it also means I've avoided over the years having hard conversations that would have been better for me if I had them, and better for other people. Not because I cared for them, but because I was worried about how I might be perceived. I didn't want to say something that might upset people, even if they needed to hear it, or even if it would have been better for other people. And that comes out in maybe I didn't have an important conversation with a client that would have cleared up an issue that was creating conflict, or maybe I didn't have a difficult conversation with an employee that wasn't performing, so the rest of the employees feel like they're picking up the slack, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or I didn't fire somebody I should have fired, right? And these all come from how we perceive, how for me, how I want to be perceived. and that's just becomes a cruel idol. It's like it bites back. The very thing I want to avoid, I get, because then all the little difficult conversations that should have happened balloon up into one really very uncomfortable conversation. And so these, so to your point, it's easy to be tempted to this, right? Because we, part of us knows, hey, we need to prioritize other things, but it looks at on the face of it like, oh, I can do this thing, I can put this thing on a pedestal, maybe even for a short period of time. It's not going to harm you, but that always bites you.
It does. And you will end up having that conversation. You run into those difficulties if you don't address it early on. Question is when and how bad is it going to be? How tough is it going to be? And one thing you're doing here that I really appreciate is you're talking about your faith, you're talking about your values from the outset in the conversation here. And there is a large economy and industry already built around people ready to share their faith and to work with other people who share their faith, find customers with that. I'm curious how much of that has influenced the way that you look at other types of values that businesses are able to wear on their sleeves, which is the basis then of your book, Liberty Spenders, and what you're doing now. But before we get into that, I want to just double click into the faith that you're bringing up here.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I think most of us, one interesting opportunity I think a lot of people are missing is one of the ways to do good in the world and to lead with faith, to do good things is to watch where you spend your money. And as liberty-minded people here, all of us as part of the Liberty Ventures crew here, let's call ourselves. We want to support liberty. We want to see liberty for all. And one of the best ways we can do that is to choosing to spend our money with businesses and other folks who support liberty. And it's an interesting opportunity. It's a way to make a difference in the world without spending an extra penny. Is if I'd rather buy from a brand that's going to support liberty values or Christian values, if you're me, than a brand that isn't. I've got diaper A, diaper B over here. I have Every Life diapers over here, Pampers over here. Every Life's going to support my values. Pampers isn't. And so why wouldn't I make that simple choice that costs me no extra money? My kids are still getting, of course, I'm now all diaper free, thankfully, unfortunately for Every Life, but I think it's a great opportunity, and increasingly more American consumers are looking at their purchasing decisions that way. A Harris poll, which is now a few years old, from 2022, said that 85% of all American consumers would like to see the companies they buy from to match their values. And 75% of those consumers have said they switched a brand in the last year over some kind of values misalignment. We can all think of the big ones, right? We can, like the big ones that made national news, like Bud Light, who lost a bunch of, liberty-minded conservative consumers by partnering with an influencer that wasn't aligned. But you can also see it on the left, if you will, because Teslas used to be popular in San Francisco, not so popular in Indianapolis. Now it's the other way around, right? Red voters want to buy their Teslas. Democrats are trying to sell Teslas at a deep discount because people are making purchasing decisions today increasingly based on values, sort of tribal affiliations and what that means. And as a business, that's an opportunity, in my opinion, to differentiate yourself in a world where it's incredibly difficult to do that, particularly if you're in sort of a B to C world where you're trying to sell a product online. And it's so easy to copycat and, copy what you're doing. But you can build a loyal following by connecting with people who share your values, like a Black Rifle Coffee Company or a Chick-fil-A or a Hobby Lobby, or like I mentioned, Every Life Diapers or Patriot Mobile. These are all businesses that are differentiating based on values as much as they are on quality of product.
So on one level, I totally agree with you. I mean, what you're talking about is the B2C version of what we're even doing with the Liberty Ventures Network, where we're bringing together business leaders who share these values to work with each other in different
Yeah.
ways. And you're talking about some companies that everyone has heard of that clearly do wear their values on their sleeves, but have also gotten flack for it. They've gotten negative media attention. They've gotten boycotts before, and I'm sure that scares some businesses who are listening here that are consumer oriented. So why should they not be scared of those potential negative media reviews, of potential boycotts from some customers, from the attacks that they'll take for that?
Yeah. I mean, I tell people it's so much better to be something to somebody than everything to nobody. Right. And so if you're worried that some people will be less attracted to you if you're more public about your values, you will attract more people than you let go. Chick-fil-A is a good example, since you mentioned them. They were they were attacked a few years ago because they were donating money to the Salvation Army, which is a Christian organization. At the time, Salvation Army, I don't think allowed, and and probably still does not allow, like homosexual ministers or something in Salvation Army. So they were being attacked for supporting the Salvation Army. And uh, what happened was there was an attempt to boycott them, but Chick-fil-A got instead a boycott from their supporters, people who lined up for miles to buy from Chick-fil-A for a couple of weeks during this moment. And it's because they stood for something that people really connected with. And I think that's what we're missing. Sometimes the best way to create a loyal customer is to let them know, hey, we're part of your tribe. Um, and I would also say most of us, Chick-fil-A is an interesting example because they have a nationwide footprint. They everybody can and should be eating chicken sandwiches, right? Their ideal customer profile is very broad, and people, they don't, when you walk into a Chick-fil-A restaurant, they're not asking where you stand on liberty issues, right? They just want to know you want a good chicken sandwich, right? But for most businesses, B2C or B2B, we don't need 300 million people to know who we are to make good money. We need 3,000 people to know who we are, or we need 4,000 people. If you had 4,000 members of Liberty Ventures, you might feel overwhelmed, right? So your advantage is to pick a niche and run up the score, right? And I think that's where businesses should look at this. There are, at least in this country, 76.5 million Americans who, when you ask, say they're far more likely to buy from a brand that reflects their conservative or Christian values. Most of us don't need even close to 76.5 million consumers to have a very profitable business.
Now, first off, where do you get that 76.5 million number? Because that is a big number to get to.
Yeah. So we were curious ourselves because we knew about these businesses, like I'd mentioned before, Hobby Lobby and Black Rifle Coffee and Patriot Mobile and Strive Asset Management, which is Vivek Ramaswamy was involved in that, and there's um, Old Glory Bank, and there's Thrivent Financial. That's another bank that serves a lot of faith oriented. So we knew these folks were out there. So the question is, how nichey is this market? Are we talking about 5 million people, or are we talking about 50 million, or 75 million? What is it? So we partnered with what is now Eyes Over Technologies, which is a polling and analytics firm that's co-owned by Brad Parscale and Don Trump Jr. And the CEO is a brilliant guy named Chris Wilson. And we did a big national survey. We surveyed 10,000 people, and we asked them how impacted they were by a company's values in their purchasing decisions. And then we modeled the entire population of the country and scored everyone based on that 10,000 person survey, just like we would do if we were. I come from a background in politics, so just like we were due if we were going to predict who was voting for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris, We did it, but in this case for purchasing decisions. And we found 76.5 million Americans. 45 million of them would like to see companies be both conservative and Christian in their values. And then the remaining 30 million are one or the other. So they care about Christian values, but they don't really care about conservative values, or they care about conservative values and not Christian. And I think that's probably small, right? We were trying to find people who we thought would be willing to endure some inconvenience, maybe even pay a little extra to do business with a brand that they favor. But if you look at a big brand like Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A will do $40 million or $40 billion or something this year. Hobby Lobby will do 7.5, right? So they're clearly picking up a vast audience of folks. So, but that's an easier decision. There's Chick-fil-A on every corner, and they, by the way, have an amazing Chick-fil-A sandwich, right? And that goes
and
into
that's
their
actually something
that goes to their
I want to
favor.
emphasize here, that it's not just about having these values and putting them on your marketing materials and assuming people are going to buy from you. You still have to have a really good product or service that people actually want here.
Yeah,
What is the dynamic
yeah,
between values and what's actually being sold?
yeah. I mean, I tell people you can't run your business like a charity. Like, people should support your business only because they support your values, because that will only get you so far. You've got to have the fundamentals um, nailed down, and you got to have a good product. And I think that's why Chick-fil-A's grown. That not only do they have good values, but their employees are great, the experience is great, and the chicken sandwich tastes great, and the fries are good, and even their Oreo shake, which I've had to swear off in the last few weeks here. Um, but it's good food. Hobby Lobby has a good experience, great variety, amazing company. So I don't think that. I think values is a differentiator when you've got a good business going, right? I would say this though, anecdotally, if we look at, say, a company like Patriot Mobile. So Patriot Mobile is a wireless company. They provide wireless plans just like Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, et cetera. You're talking about a company that's a fraction of the size of these giant brands, right? And that doesn't even include people like Mint Mobile and other folks that are bopping around. But they have one of the highest retention rates in the industry when I talk to one of their board members. And I think what you do get from these kinds of consumers is they're bought into your values, so they're willing to be more patient with you as you figure things out and grow. So there is a loyalty factor there. But if you can't complete a phone call with your Patriot Mobile phone, then nobody's going to stay, right? And so you got to have the basics nailed down, and you got to have your customer service. You got to have those things. And as I've talked to those folks at Patriot Mobile, they went from 0 people. I think they have something in the neighborhood of 150,000 subscribers now, and they've had to go through all those growth challenges when they didn't need a lot of customer support, but now with 150,000 users, they need a lot of customer support. And so you're 100% right. If you're going to be out there pitching your product, you got to have a good product. That's sort of built in. We do a little caveat about that in our book, because we run into this from time to time. People saying, "Well, why isn't I'm talking about my values, but my business isn't growing." Well, it's because your product's not great.
So, are there any other pitfalls that you see people who are trying to wear their liberty values on their sleeves and talking to consumers that still hold them back? Are there other things like they talk about it the wrong way, or they're going for the wrong segment still, or what other mistakes do you see people
Yeah.
make once they're bought into this idea?
Yeah. So we talk to people. In our book, we have a chapter on what we call positioning. There are a lot of ways to do this, right? There's not only one way, right? There's not just the Mike Lindell way, right? Where you built My Pillow, and then you're struggling with it because you got so involved in politics that you've kind of marginalized a little too much, right? Uh, Although, by the way, My Pillow still does fantastic, right? So he's got a loyal base. So what we call what we call the Lindell strategy, we call that the ideology strategy. Patriot Mobile pursues a similar one. you go to Patriot Mobile's website, it says America's only conservative and Christian wireless provider. They donate a percentage of their proceeds to elect Republicans to office. It's very ideological, right? Lindell's been very outspoken in support for Trump and how he felt like the 2020 election was stolen, right? And even Hobby Lobby has an ideological vibe. They put Jesus in their advertising. So on Easter, they put the cross. On Christmas, they put the birth of our Savior. This is very ideological. It's very clear where they stand on faith and on politics, and you can't get around it because they're going to tell you about it. But then you compare that to, say, Chick-fil-A, since we bring them up, and I'm getting hungrier the more I talk about it. But so Chick-fil-A, their advertisements are two cows on a billboard saying "Eat more chicken," right? They're closed on Sundays, which sends a message to people, but it's not. When you go to the door in our Greenwood store, it doesn't say closed for the Sabbath. It says closed to give our employees a day of rest, right? Now, people know that the owners are Christian because they've spoken about their faith publicly, but it's not in their advertising. They're not marketing with it. They've just sent a very clear message with closed on Sundays and various things that they've done that people who go there, they recognize the values. Plus, you can't miss it when you're going through a Chick-fil-A. There's something different about them. But we call that issue. Black Rifle Coffee is very similar. They talk about supporting veterans and the military, and that's a very issue-oriented approach. They aren't out there endorsing candidates. They're not like Patriot Mobile saying we're donating money to Republicans. They're just pro-veteran, pro-military, pro-America. And who isn't, right? Right, left, or indifferent, we all support veterans, right? But the brand tends to lead a little conservative because there's a lot of military people and people shooting guns in their ads. And if you're maybe a San Francisco progressive, that's not your vibe, you know? So that's more of an issue focus. The other one is we call just market fit. There are some products out there that's such a fit for this market. You don't really need to talk values a ton because people get it right away, you know. And you know, if you're selling Bibles, you don't need to tell the whole world you're a Christian company, right? I mean, just the fact you're selling Bibles makes some sense, right? Or you know, there's a lot of companies out there right now selling alternative health products, which fit perfectly in with the Mahab movement and sort of all natural. Let's not trust the government, and let's not all be on big pharma. And you can market those products as a fit for this audience without. So I think what holds people back is they think there's only one way to do it. They got to do it like this person, and they don't want to be that person. You can find a pathway that fits your values and that works authentically, and that's the key. You can't be a company that doesn't really share these values out there marketing these products because people won't buy it, and people are not dumb. They see past it quickly.
Kurt, I love that. And I realize we're coming up at the end of the time that we've got right now. So let me just ask, if anyone wants to get some more advice from you and to figure out how to tap into this, aside from getting the book Liberty Spenders, which I recommend to everyone, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so check us out at libertyspenders.com. It's the best way. There's a book a call on there if you want to talk. I'm also on LinkedIn. Um, you know, just Kurt Luidhardt. It's a great way to reach us. Those are the two best ways. And you can get a free copy of our book at libertyspenders.com/free. You can download a PDF version, although we're on Amazon too if you just want to donate to the cause. Um, and that'd be a great way to learn more.
Kurt, thank you so much. Love what you're doing here. Love everything that you're pushing out there with Liberty Spenders, and love that you're a part of the Liberty Ventures Network. Really, thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll talk soon.